1 year ago this month, I moved from Brighton, Michigan to White Lake, Michigan, and this has been my experience so far. What's going on, everyone? Andrew McManaman here with Living in Michigan, and of course, your all-time favorite Michigan realtor, helping people like you buy, sell, invest in the great state of Michigan. So if that tickles your fancy, be sure to do your thing below so you never miss out on an upload. As I mentioned in this video, I'm going to touch on my 1 year experience since moving to White Lake, Michigan from Brighton and how different the two cities are. But before I do, if you haven't seen it already, I made a video a year ago about White Lake that includes a driving tour, cheapest home, most expensive home, new construction homes, attractions, resident reviews, and a market report, along with a video about buying my lake home from start to finish, followed by my endless videos about Brighton. So if that interests you, I'll link all those in the description below so you can add it to your queue. Here's a little backstory to kickstart this video. I have lived in Brighton, Michigan from the day I was born until a year ago. My now fiance and I made the move out of Brighton into a little lake house in White Lake. One of the biggest things I have found that is lacking a little bit, and of course is very much based on preference, is the downtown area. Brighton is known to have a close-knit and amazing downtown area, whereas White Lake has the M59 corridor. I've said in previous video that this strip is everything you could ever need and more, but it's a 4-lane road at times and upwards of 55 miles per hour, and that isn't the criteria for a walkable downtown area. It's not the end of the world, since the biggest appeal for us was the fact that the home is on a lake, so where the downtown lacks, it's made up a little bit here. Another thing I noticed jumping from Brighton to White Lake is the driving difference. If you have ever been to Brighton, specifically off of US 23 near Lee Road, right next to the Green Oak Village place, you know there are gigantic roundabouts that intimidate anyone not familiar with them. And with that being said, I almost feel Brighton drivers are better because of it. Yes, there are a lot of times where accidents have almost happened, but in White Lake, I've had too many close calls for comfort. And I have no idea why that is. I know it's not White Lake specific, but some days it really feels like it. If you're familiar with the geographic location of White Lake, you'd know it's pretty smack dab in the middle of a lot of lakes, depending on what side of the city you're located in. I've noticed it really is a lake town. People are more relaxed. There's bathing suits, flip-flops, tops off Jeeps, someone always towing a boat, jet skis, etc. It creates a more relaxed and close-knit community in a sense, as I have made quite a few good relationships with not only people on my lake, but other nearby lakes as well. It almost feels like this little getaway spot no one really tells you about. People are launching their boats in the middle of the day, tubing, wakeboarding, fishing. It's the same situation in the winter too, from ice fishing, snowmobiling, and of course utilizing the Alpine Valley ski hill right down the road. It's definitely a change in scenery from Brighton to White Lake, and if you're someone in an incredibly busy and traffic-heavy metro area that you're beyond sick of, I think you'd enjoy this. Granted, the traffic is increasing a little bit in White Lake. Maybe they all saw my White Lake video and ran over here as soon as possible.
Right.
On the plus side though, there are plans to put in a few roundabouts over the years, from what I hear, to keep the traffic moving forward, which would be a huge plus because in any lake community, roads tend to wind around all these different lakes, so helping the commute a little bit would be a gigantic plus. Let's talk about traffic real quick while we're on the topic. In comparison to Brighton. In Brighton, Grand River tends to be one of the main veins to get from point A to B. So during rush hour, it can be a pain in the you-know-what to get where you're going. But on the other hand, White Lake Township has so many different school districts, from Clarkson Community Schools, Holly Area Schools, Huron Valley Schools, Walled Lake Community Schools, and Waterford Community Schools, and they all have bus traffic, parent pickup, and drop-off traffic. So if you're driving during the school drop-off and pickup times, you could find yourself waiting for a little while. Most times, lines of cars tend to form on the side of the road to keep the traffic moving. A lot of people think that White Lake is smaller than Brighton, but in terms of their townships, White Lake Township is about 37 square miles and Brighton Township is just over 34 square miles. So they have a relatively similar size, but it's the population difference that's pretty surprising. White Lake Township is a population of over 32,000 people, and Brighton Township has a little less than 20,000 people. There are a few reasons for that. White Lake is more affordable than Brighton, unless you buy a home on the lake, of course. And taking a look at this graph real quick, provided by the multiple listing service, it shows the median sale price in White Lake Township versus Brighton Township. In July 2022, White Lake Township had a median sales price of $350,000, which was a 7.2% increase from a year ago, whereas Brighton Township had a median sale price of $435,000, a 16% increase from a year ago. You can get a house for $85,000 less in White Lake Township, so it's safe to say it's quite a bit more affordable. On top of that, you can get a lake house in White Lake for under $300,000 depending on the size and the condition, of course. A lake home in Brighton can be $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 to well over $1 million. Another reason the population is lower in Brighton versus White Lake is due to the greenery. Brighton is known for their trees and has actually received the award for Tree City USA due to all the trees around the city. Trees take up some space, so shoving more people in an area would be pretty hard to do. Yes, it can be said the same for lakes in White Lake Township, but it's much easier to pile a ton of people on 0.15 acre lots around a lake, no matter how much space the lake takes up. In terms of lake living versus not, I'll link another video below about a recent video I made about finding your dream lake in Michigan, as it touches on lake living just a little bit. It was eye-opening at first. I thought you could just sit back and enjoy the view off the back patio, but unfortunately, that view comes with a little maintenance. From raking the lake, fighting off the geese to keep them from crapping all over your yard, to eroding land and dock maintenance. So if you're wanting to get yourself a lake home, keep those few things in mind. When it comes to proximity and location, I have found White Lake Township to be a little bit more convenient in that department, actually. Of course, it depends heavily on where you're located in the city, but for my personal situation, the amenities are much closer to me here than they were in Brighton. And I live very close to businesses and the expressway in Brighton, but with M59 being such a large corridor, there's often more variety. So if you're wanting to do some home improvement, there's Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, Ace Hardware, very close to each other, where there's much more space in Brighton for that. For example, if you wanted to go to Lowe's or Walmart living in Brighton, you'd have to travel over to Howell. It isn't the end of the world, obviously, but just a little more travel involved there. On the other hand, being as I drive all over the state of Michigan, living in Brighton was a little more convenient for commuting from city to city since the expressway on-ramp was so close by. Whereas in White Lake, you have to take quite a few roads before you can hop onto the expressway. And I believe for me, it's about 15 to 20 minutes before I do. But that was one of the trade-offs we accepted when getting a lake home in White Lake. Another thing I wish I would have taken into account a little more is the neighborhood. In Brighton, I was in a subdivision where you could go around the block twice and it would be a mile. So for exercise purposes, walking the dog, etc., it was convenient to track and was a very nice thing to have there. Here in White Lake, the neighborhood isn't one big loop around the lake due to some other intersecting streets and some agricultural land that stops the road from going right through. So I find myself having to do a lot of circling and turning around in the neighborhood when walking around, or we go to some other nearby neighborhood or park down the road. Again, not a huge issue, but having some flow to the neighborhood would have been a nice plus. For those of you that are curious, what other questions about the 1 year experience do you have? Drop your questions in the comments below. I hope this video created some value for you and got you thinking about some things to keep in mind when looking for your first or next home. If it helped you out, be sure to give it a big old thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and tap the little bell so you never miss out on an upload. Until next time.